Welcome, everybody. Looking for Dan
I'm here.
to kick us off.
Yep. Just was reaching for it when you started talking.
No worries.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to another thrilling, exciting day of Code Talk. So,
Is that this YouTube channel? Is Code Talk?
Yeah, we just made it up. So, anyway, Dust, if you want to do a roll call real quick, we'll get started.
All right. Chair Primary Dan Young.
Present.
Chair Alternate Roger Heringa. Believe he was going to maybe join us a little bit late, so I don't see him in the room yet. Architect Primary Ning Wang. Don't see them in the room today. Alternate Jacob Liddycoat.
Here.
Thank you. For Building Official Primary Quinn Tai. I believe he said he was not going to make it today, and we're looking for the alternate Ray Shipman.
I am here.
Thank you. Fire Official Fire Marshal Primary Ken Brulette. He must still be on the phone with
I'm
Dave.
here.
Oh, there he
I'm
is.
here.
All right. Cities and Counties Primary Hugo Sotelo.
Present.
Thank you. For the Home Builder Affordable Housing Developer Primary, there's been a change in this seat. At our council meeting on the 18th, this seat was designated ex officio for attendance issues. Anyway, so that one's designated ex officio. It doesn't count towards our quorum calculation, but it also doesn't affect the number of people we need to establish a quorum within the group. So we're still looking for 7 seats represented. General contractor or developer primary Bill Mybush. I am not seeing them in the room today. For manufacturer supplier primary Ricky Campbell.
Present.
Thank you. For fire protection engineer primary Walker Danucci.
Present.
Thank you. And for the alternate Dave Kokot.
Present.
Thank you. Fire sprinkler industry primary Sean Morgan. Don't see them in the room today. For the alternate Kevin Marr.
Present.
Thank you. For general public subject matter expert primary Samir Mokashi. Not seeing them in the room today. For the alternate Seth Henderson.
Present.
Thank you. For fire alarm industry primary David Mao.
Present.
For the alternate Zachary Tuck.
Present.
Thank you. And fire chief primary Lance Dahl.
Here.
All righty. With that, we have 11 of our seats represented, and we are well over quorum today.
Nice. So, all right, we need to next anybody from the public that wants to be known.
Hello, my name's Karsten. Do you know if you received the revised proposal that we had talked about in the last meeting?
I would have to defer. Rosanna, did we get that one in our inbox yet?
I believe so, we did.
Okay. Carson, I think we also got a request to acknowledge we got it. We'll just double check it, and I'll make sure we have everything we need from you.
Yeah, it was a 119.
Okay, I'll double check. I do believe we have it, and I think we'll be all good on that one.
All right, next up, Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
All right. Okay, next we will go to review and approve agenda. And then you have enough.
And it's for everybody's as far as the items we have on here through 5 through 19. These are the remaining proposals in our work to do outside of the ones we've decided we're going to table for a future meeting. So we got about 6 or 7 more proposals outside of what's on this list to go back and hit before we can say we've hit all of them once.
Dan, this
This is Kevin. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to approve and second. Any discussion? I do have a question though. Were we going to talk about a work group, Dustin?
I wasn't necessarily gonna plan on talking about it today. I know Jamie Knowles is very interested in that work group. I was, maybe in other business, we can discuss it if we get to that one. I was hoping
Okay.
to, get that kind of squared away with, you, Roger, and some of the other interested parties before we spoke at it at this, group.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. All right, any other discussion? So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. So next we will go to review and approve minutes. Do we get those this time? Oh, there they are.
Yes, we have all except for the October 15th, the most recent meeting we had is not quite ready yet.
Okay.
Just didn't quite make it yesterday afternoon. And so these are the minutes from the 12th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Rosanna?
thought this was the
These are the
first.
first.
Oh, the first. I'm sorry. I got too many tag meetings going on in my head.
At least that's what it said at the beginning before you started scrolling. Okay.
This is Walker. I'll make a motion to, oh, we have two. Okay, second one. Never mind.
We can take them one at a time or do them as a group if you guys like.
I just do them as a group. Thank you. This is Walker. I'll make a motion for to approve the minutes of October 1st and October 8th.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, so next on our agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments? Ken?
And I'm willing to wait until there's any other public that needs to talk, but if there isn't, then let me know and I'll go.
I think you're okay to go.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. That's okay. I'm gonna ask to share. All right, thank you very much. Let me throw something up here first. So what I wanted to talk about is something that's not on the agenda. Is we have this emergency rule. I'm gonna make sure everybody can see that.
I'm not
Wait,
seeing
I'm
your
not
screen
seeing it.
yet.
Not yet.
And
It's starting now.
coming through now. Yep,
It's coming through now.
Yep.
got it.
All right. All right.
WSR 2412-053.
Okay. So this is the emergency rule that we had put into place that was supposed to go into effect in July, and then it got changed to January 1 of 2025. So basically the Building Code Council said, hey, let's try to get the industry and fire officials together and try to come up with a a way that we can make this work until we can come up with maybe a 24 code change proposal. So so nothing has really changed besides pushing the date to January 1. Well, guess what? January 1's right around the corner, and we still have a problem with addressing the previous concerns. The code change proposal that went in prior, back in June, was to try to, or the emergency amendment, was to put in this second exception number 2 in here that would allow just for dry chemical systems, the ICC NAFED. And there still was some questioning regarding work experience and just be able just to take the test and move on. And I'm trying to get the any feedback on if we took that exception and asked to add it in, but also include in and manufacturer certification. So in addition to doing the ICC NAFED, we also document that, they document to the AHJ that they have manufacturer certification that also has been obtained. And I just wanted to get any feedback from any tag members if they think this would be the right approach to address the current 2021 code before we tackle the 24 code in this section and discuss it anymore. But just to try to, we have this urgency kind of in front of us that this is going to, get thrown back to the Building Code Council for some kind of an action before January 1. So I'm wondering if any tag members would support it or not support adding in that language to be a stopgap until we get to the 24. So I'll be quiet.
Okay, Lance has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. You've put in there exactly what Dave and I have talked about for a week or two now, or more. And I would be supportive of that. That's very similar to what we do in Spokane when we're registering our servicers, is that they're competent from the manufacturer on the installations that they're licensed to install or certified from the manufacturer to install.
Well, that's good to hear. Anybody else have any comments or anything like that to help push this forward? Because my goal is if we get enough just verbal support now, we get it on the next tag agenda, and then maybe, Dustin, we can get it on the November Building Code Council meeting to and I don't know what rulemaking it would be considered, but to make it happen.
So is the desire to make this change after the make it effective after the January 1 kind of rollover date?
Well, we need to make it effect as of January 1. So
Okay.
it would be an emergency rule. And then we would have to then go through the off-cycle rule process to make it permanent for the 21?
Yes, we'd have to go through that. So right now, as it is, we do that document you pulled up has expired. We have another emergency filing. It's not posted online on the register site just yet.
Oh,
So we
oh,
have
it's
one
not
of
on.
the exact same language.
Okay.
It was just refiled. So we have the CR 101 filed for the regular rulemaking on this. If we could get this language through the tag, I mean, so we've been directed to do some rulemaking on it, but I don't know if we have the time to follow through with regular rulemaking to be effective July 1 with this particular one. Even if we came to next tag meeting or even scheduled some other business today to make a vote on this to move it up the line and have it ready for the November council meeting. I'm still not sure we would have the time for the wait period and then the hearings that need to happen, and then the filing process. If we could potentially have some action on this today by the tag to move it forward, and then we might need to file another emergency rule with altered language to make it effective on the date we need it effective by, but then we'll have to finalize the rest of the normal rulemaking to make it that effect permanent.
Yeah, and that probably the best path is to do it as emergency rule, get it going, and then go through the other code development process. That makes sense to me, but I'd like to hear what anybody else has to
Okay.
say about
So-
it
So
too.
Ricky was next.
If we wanted to reserve some time at the end of this meeting, like 15, 20 minutes, I don't know how much time we would need to talk about it. We could get it ready and move it. We can't take action on it now at this agenda item, but if we bring it back as part of other business after tabling some other stuff, we could get this moving today and come to the committee with it and then come to the full council with it and talk about the timelines needed to go through CR 102 process and what we need to happen with the emergency process at the November meeting. Or we could hold till the next tag meeting as well.
So as far as my opinion of this, I think this is excellent idea. Common sense. I think that I can support this, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. Zachary?
Yeah, Ken, I support this verbiage 100%. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, this is the time you start smiling. All right. There we go. All right. So
So
Jamie, give us a thumbs up if you're in favor of it too, since you were the one that originally brought.
I'm
Yeah,
100%. I've just been waiting for the process to go through. Thank you very much. I am the proponent and am happy with this outcome or
All right.
direction.
All right, Walker, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to voice similar. I think it's very good development. Good for us to get in there. I didn't know if it needs to be current, active, open manufacturer certification. And I don't know if that's important. I think manufacturer certification implies it needs to be active. So
Okay.
never mind.
Yeah. Okay, so Dustin, what do we need to do? Do we need to,
we just need to be mindful of time and come back with other business on this
so
one.
that way we can get this done today so we can bring it back next week?
It'll give me the more lead time I need to juggle everything else and bring this to the council in an appropriate time manner.
Okay. All right.
So
well,
we're
then
going to address this at the end of the meeting, Dustin? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
we're
I'm where I need to be when
we're
we
gonna
need to be.
slate some time here. It sounds like the work group has met outside of having one officially convened. And then depending on how much conversation we think we need, we can talk about that now. But I think 15 to 20 minutes is more than enough to handle it with the support I heard here.
Okay.
Well, is it
And that's
something
at the end of this meeting, right, sir?
Yeah, we're not allowed to take the action at this agenda item right now.
Yep. Okay.
Fine. I just want to make sure I know when I'm supposed to be available. That's all.
Gotcha. So 4:30 plus.
Okay. All right. So any other public comments not on the agenda? Not seeing any, so we will move on to number 5, which is electrical energy storage systems. Ken?
All right. I'll wait for it to get pulled up because I'm just pulling it up now.
So let me pop that open. All right.
Okay. This is a big one. But it just looks big. It's because it's showing all of the strike throughs of the current code. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to run down to. So can you just run down to number 5, just to explain the proposal?
It just looks big, huh?
Yeah, it does because I had to kind of show everything that was getting struck and.
Should have just
And
made it
yeah,
go
once
to
you get-
page bottom and came back. Almost there. There it is.
There we go. Yeah, so number 5. Dun, 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 dun.
There it is.
Okay. Well, yeah, there we go. Okay, so as you remember, when we did some emergency amendments and off-cycle rules, we were all referencing NFPA 855 as the reference document. And why we were doing that and bringing language from NFPA 855 is it was kind of ahead of the fire code. So what they've done is say, let's go along with all of the 855 stuff and just make the fire code more of a pointer towards those documents, towards that document. And because both documents are, technically consistent, and we don't have to have somebody opening up both documents and seeing, okay, this is what's in the fire code, this is what's in NFPA, and trying to correlate the two. So the number one there, it says, delete the section 1207 prescriptive requirements and replace the language with references to NFPA 855. So again, it's just pointers, and that's what we do a lot in the code, is just point to NFPA 855. I don't know what's going on, Dustin, if you're, is that my screen is popping up at your screen, my screen. Okay, sorry. I had Teams all of a sudden pop up over my screen. And then also there's cross references that are to the IBC and IMC. We're not looking at changing any of those. And then it just correlates also anything that is was in 855 or anything that was in 1207. It just kind of correlates to make sure it's only going to be in 855. So we removed anything so it wasn't being duplicated. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the easiest way to go. I'm going to try to go back up to, I think, where it says what it's going to look like. Hold on. So just so everybody knows, this is something that's already been approved the first go around at the ICC for the 2027 code change, that in the second rounds this week. So, God, I wish I could be running the screen here.
Do you have your proposal available?
Yeah, let me just.
If you want, I can let you share, and then you can display. And if we need to make any modifications, I'll be here on my side.
Okay, thank you. Get a little easier. Okay, so share. All right, so we'll start with everybody see the general section?
Yes.
Okay. So the exception has basically been tuned up a little bit to include where before it was just it didn't have, let me back up a second. In the general section, they wanted to include portable ESS systems in here too, because there is some requirements in 855 regarding the portable ones. And if you've noticed, that's a big market now. So again, we're trying to stay in front of the technology. Is you're seeing these portable ones that are, multiple kilowatt hours that people could just bring right on in to their businesses or homes and string them together, and they're going to be well over the permitted amounts for their use. So we wanted to make sure that understood that this wasn't just for stationary units, but it was also for portable. So that was included in there. The exceptions for R3 and R4 occupancies, this is correlating with UL 9540 with their listing and labeling requirements for habitable spaces. That was added in there to clarify. And then also to carve out anybody that's installing them per the residential code. So if you just have a 1 or 2 family dwelling that's is going to come under the IRC, that they're okay with just going per the residential code requirements in there for the ESS systems. So that's the beginning to 12701, and then you'll just see the delete without substitution. All of these other items, these items are just going to be deleted out because, again, if you see where it says material based on NFPA 855, there's no reason for us to repeat it. So we're just deleting it. The scoping section, here. It just redoes the it eliminates the table and just points to the table 1.3 of NFP 855 in lieu of having our own table in 1207. And then again, then we're deleting, this was the table, just didn't show up in table format. Under permits, we still have the construction permit is still required, and the operational permit is still required. So there's no proposed changes to that. It's just a renumbering here. No changes here except for renumbering. New text added for detached 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses, and just make sure everybody understands, because it's under the permits section here, 1207.2, that an operational permit is not required for 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses other than group R4. And that would still be, since we have R4 now in Washington, we would not have to amend that out. So yes, they would still have to have the installation permit, but again, they wouldn't have to have an operational permit. The installation, again, just a reference to NFPA 99, that they just kind of a pointer back to that document. The fire safety and evacuation plan, that was just added in, complying with 855. So there'd just be a pointer basically back over to 404 where it's required. Vehicle impact protection. They have some code change proposals that get really in depth for what this impact protection needs to be, but right now it's just a pointer back to 312, which is currently in the code now. And the fire detection, again, just points to 855. The sprinkler suppression or fire suppression points to 855. Explosion control points now to 855 instead of the table, or NFPA 69. And then there's also this additional statement here where cabinet or walk-in unit is installed within a room or building. Design of the explosion control shall include the cabinet, walk-in unit, and room it is installed within. That is just some clarification language. And then you also have the exception here, that you don't necessarily have to have it if you're complying with NFPA 855. And then we go through and add some new text for the exhaust systems, and just basically saying, hey, if you got to have one per 855, you got to put it per the mechanical code. If you have to have a gas detection system per 855, it shall be installed per 916 of the fire code. The fire resistive separations, again, if it's required in 855, then there's a pointer to 707 of the IBC to have that fire barrier put in. Dedicated use buildings, just saying that they are an F1 occupancy. The roads point you back to 503. This is something that we could amend out if we want to, since we do have our own state amendment that says we're not adopting that section, so we could actually delete this if we needed to. The water supplies. Then we're deleting all of this other stuff that was in 1207. And I just want to make sure. I know it's a 3-hour meeting. I feel like I'm making it longer.
So what we're paging through here, Ken, you're saying is covered by NFPA 855.
Exactly. That's the reason that it's all struck through, but I kind of want to show all the language struck through, but and then it gets into the stuff that's in the So the 1207.11, which is the group R3 and R4, we took care of that at the very beginning. And then there is some other stuff for 1203. It's just kind of some additional cleanup with some pointers that need to get cleaned up. We added in the terminology mechanical instead of just having a exhaust ventilation systems. We wanted to make sure it was in correlation with the correct language, which is a mechanical system, and then had the right pointer here to 1207.9. Same thing with the gas detection system. We just want to make sure we had the right pointer over here to 1207.10. And then under the energy storage system in chapter 9, to add in that they can have a thermal imaging detection system and not have to have just be limited to a radiant energy or automatic smoke detection system, and then cleaned up the reference. And then we did the same thing in the building code here, was just adding in the thermal imaging detection to this section since it comes from the fire code and having the reference document or the reference section changed. So it's a big proposal, but it really isn't. It just kind of correlates everything that's in 855, points to 855. It will reduce our book in size because we'll be deleting a few pages, which is always a good thing. And it just, again, puts us kind of on the lead of energy storage systems and not be behind, because the 24 code would still be considered behind. So we need to keep up with the 855 document as much as possible, and point to that and use that for our energy storage system. So that's the proposal. And I don't know if I got any other, well, I guess this is probably the easiest way to probably show it is this is what the entire chapter would look like. So, and maybe I should have had Dustin look at this, but
Assalamualaikum.
so you'll see how much smaller it is.
Yeah, I'm doing a side by side with the 2024
Okay.
IFC. And
So that's
certainly.
it. It's pretty much just the 1207 up to 14 lines. So we still have our general, what it applies for, 0.855. We still have the 2 permits. We still have the detached 1 and 2 family dwellings that we don't have to have the operational permits, the installation, evacuation plan, vehicle impact protection, fire detection, suppression, explosion control, exhaust ventilation, gas detection, fire resistance ratings, dedicated use buildings. And then this is where we can talk about if you guys want to cut out the apparatus road stuff or not. So I don't know if it's even clear how I explained it or not, but I think, Walker's looking at a side-by-side comparison. I don't know if that's helpful or not. So I'm going to turn the controls back over to you, Dustin, if you want to maybe scroll to that point so everybody sees what the finished product is.
I was following along with you, so I'm right around in here. So I guess it's discussion time. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Ken?
Looks like Ray does.
Yeah, hey Ken, I think this is a great job. We got a lot of these coming up in our area. But I'll agree with you. The only thing I think we need to remove would be that fire apparatus road due to the RCW state. We can't regulate it in code. That's all I have.
So we could just make it just delete that out and just renumber the fire protection water supply to 1207.13.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so you could just delete that out of the proposal.
Okay.
yeah, going through side by side, Ken, and to the group, I don't see anything missing. You know, I think we still have everything covered with much shortened and coordinated to NFPA 855 version.
And just so everybody realizes, there's been this national work group that's been meeting monthly and bi-weekly for this entire year on the code change proposal that went for the 27 code. So this has been vetted by industry, other fire officials, and they all got behind this, and the Fire Code Action Committee is the ones that was pushing this forward for the 27 code. So it's not something that was not thought of.
So Ken, if I have that striking of 1207.13 down here in the bottom, is that something I need to bring up here into the top as well?
Probably if it was shown above, then yeah, you'll probably have to, where it said add the language. Yeah, I wish I could.
Yes, and I think it'll be on PDF page 5.
On page 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here you go.
There you go.
Okay, so got that change made. Anything else for Ken? Not seeing any hands or anything flying up, so I guess we're in a position for motions.
This is Walker. I'll make a motion to advance this to SBCC.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any, so we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 If you're any opposed,
And I'm just the abstention.
Ken's abstaining and motion passes.
All righty. So that one is saved. And that brings us to agenda item number 6. This is the James Bond proposal. It's 007. I've been dying to say that at all the
I was gonna say.
Sorry.
You've been practicing that for 2 days.
Yeah.
So, this one is drafted by Ken Marr and Ken Brulette.
Yeah.
So I'll scroll down to the 4 or 5. Which one would be please?
Just you could probably show the men's section to read as follows section, and then the 5. Just scroll a little bit. There you go. That should be good enough.
Okay.
So yeah, Kevin and I worked on this. This is something I believe we already did up in Seattle. It's just there's not a definition that we could find for bulk for distilled spirits or wine, and it causes the confusion. And then looking in NFPA 13, NFPA 30, and they don't have a definition of bulk. So thought it would be best just to scratch the word bulk. So if I have a S1 fire area and I have this for the storage of distilled spirits of wine, it would be required to have a sprinkler system. And if I just have beverage storage area, there should be no storage of combustible materials in the beverage storage area not related to the beverage storage activities. So it was just trying to clean it up a little bit because people just had questions on what does that mean? When do I enforce this section? When do I don't? And since we couldn't find a definition of bulk or create one, thought it might be easier to scratch it out. It's a little different than, like, I think last week we were talking about tires, and there was a cubic foot or something like that, an aggregate, a cubic foot, and we don't have anything that was ever developed. So we're just throwing this out there as a way to maybe clean up the code a little bit and make it easier to understand. So.
Yeah, and I think that something being termed as a storage area, I think that takes care of the fact that there's bulk materials. I mean, that is what storage is. So yeah, I think that's a good way to take care of that lack of clarity.
Looks like Dave has his hand up.
Yes, I actually wasn't involved in the discussion. I did a parallel proposal, which is actually 040. I was able to find a definition for bulk and both distilled spirits from the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, which is part of the U.S. Treasury. So they do have a bulk distilled spirits definition. So my proposal 040 incorporates that into the code. So we either we can consider that as a potential option for it. What it does is bulk spirits or anything that's has a container having capacity in excess of 1 gallon. That's the national definition. So if that's something we want to consider as an alternative, that's to me it's like I'd rather have something measurable so it meets that. And I kind of got rid of the term beverage because beverage could mean all sorts of different things. For distilled spirits, also they have a definition of that, being able to put that into the code. So my proposal has a little bit different take on this.
Do you want to look at it both together, or what's the proposal there?
I would think we want to compare them because I don't think we want to have competing proposals. So in the past, we've had multiple proposals in the same area, same sections. We've usually compared the two to see which ones the tag has a stronger feel about which one they would rather see.
I'm fine with that. Ken, you realize that he's trying to undermine you and get one up on you, right?
No.
That's what I was thinking.
What I'm looking at is, so if you don't mind, Dustin, if you could pull up his 40.
Yeah.
We need a motion to hear that one with this one, or?
I don't
mean,
necessarily
they're
want to
over the
hear it.
same topic.
Yeah, I just
Got it.
want to see what his proposal looks like.
Perfect.
And just so he's defined bulk distilled spirits in a container having a capacity in excess of 1 gallon. Okay, so then if I had a whole bunch of bulk distilled spirits in a warehouse and it didn't exceed 1 gallon, then it would not have to be sprinklered. So if I had
per that definition, correct?
Yeah, so if I had 100,000 gallons of distilled spirit, and as long as I kept my containers not to exceed 1 gallon, I would not have to sprinkler it. Okay. And I don't know if that. Yeah.
I think we're losing something there. But
I think the code's intending to look at bulk storage of materials, not necessarily storage of bulk items.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in distilled spirits, if multiple bottles, then one breakage does not result in another, right? So there's going to be container limits as well. So there is some logic to it.
Yep, I agree. Container capacity is relevant.
I like the 404.4 defining the storage area with both. As much as I like your proposal, Ken, I think
As
Dave
the
did something.
distilled spirit.
Well, that's where we got to look at blending them, because mine takes into consideration chapter 9 for the sprinkler requirement.
Yeah.
And so what we would be doing then is changing the sprinkler requirement to only require sprinklers if the containers are more than 1 gallon. So I would just have to have one container. Yeah, and then I'd be okay.
So is there a way we could maybe propose a friendly amendment to combine both of these in some form?
They are not friends.
I'm
Sorry.
a bit surprised distilled spirits isn't defined in the fire code already, but
Yeah, so as I first looked at this, I had run into it in a particular situation that we had a distillery come up and they basically said, well, what is the bulk distilled spirits? And there was no way of doing anything. So I spent some time doing research and eventually found out that how there's a federal government agency that defines it. They're the ones that regulate it.
I think we try to merge them together. We, take the 903 section and we italicize the distilled spirits. Well, I don't know, what do we do with the or wine?
distilled spirits does include distilled spirits and wine, it looks like. Or does not include, I'm sorry. Right.
So we define distilled spirits.
If more than 50%, then it is distilled spirit and a wine also. If less than 50% proof or 48 proof, then it's not.
Can you just add wine to the distilled spirits definition?
It's there actually.
Yeah,
Right.
it says it does not include mixtures of distilled spirits and wine, so like port and yeah. That last line is what is not included in the definition of distilled spirits.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But yes, I agree. 903.293 lumps it in,
So general intent of the code for Ken and Dave, both of you, is to require sprinklers because it relaxed some other things. I'm trying to get my bearings. I know that there was previously wines and bottles, but then the percentage was decreased in 2021 as well, and percentage of at which this applies was changed as well in occupancies and things like that. So I think the intent is to have a threshold where sprinklers would be required because it relaxed other areas. So I think keeping wine makes sense.
I don't know if it can cause us confusion or not, because I'll be like, okay, well, the definition of bulk distilled spirits, and then I look into distilled spirits and it exempts wine.
But in the 903, you add wine separately, right?
Yeah, it says or wine. So yeah, we just got to define, probably take the.
Because then it means any wine bottle over a gallon would be considered bulk storage of wine.
Yeah, but maybe we need to. So where it says bulk storage of distilled spirits or wine, we're trying to also define what bulk distilled spirits is. So do we italicize the word bulk? And does that work for us or not? Because
I think that works for us if we're gonna add bulk distilled spirits as a definition.
Okay.
And distilled spirits. I don't even think you need to have or wine, right? If you're using the definition for distilled spirits, it's basically wine that's at 48 proof or less. Or more, excuse me, and doesn't consider anything below 48 proof.
So the easiest thing to do now, I'm thinking, is to withdraw my proposal, and Dave, you would include the chapter 9 stuff onto your proposal.
That might be the quickest, cleanest.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good mix of the two.
Okay. Now we'll give Dave the credit for this one.
Yeah, gotta put you and Kevin. Both you and Kevin are both on there, so there's 3 of us on this one.
Do we want to do we need a motion to just send this back to Dave till next week or something? Or
I think we work on it when we come up to it on the agenda. I'll
Okay,
withdraw
yep.
my, as the
Okay.
proponent. Kevin, do you agree? You're okay with withdrawing it?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so Kevin and I we're gonna withdraw our, sorry, Dustin, the 007 proposal.
And I'm bummed because I'm a Bond fan, so rock on.
So we'll
He'll
withdraw
remain
that
incognito.
proposal. Yeah, we'll withdraw it, and you could just make a note that we're correlating it with 40, I guess.
So 028, which is number 7 on our agenda, is the same as 007 there. It's one that I got a duplicate submission from you, Ken, and just the contact lines are a little bit more filled out.
Okay,
So
so yeah, let me just double check.
we can work on 040 now as part of the normal agenda here, and I guess as far as what we were proposing, we're trying to pull what we have drafted here for 903.2.9.3 into this proposal, correct?
Yes, yeah, so we'll officially withdraw our 007 and 028
Okay.
or 028.
And then as far as what we had, so the 4004.4 works
you're
as
not gonna,
drafted here.
no, hold on, you're not gonna want to show the entire 903.293 underlined. You're only gonna want to show.
Gotcha. That's actually part of our weird tracking crap.
Okay.
So that's how we would have it in here. And then we need to show the underline for this section, correct?
Well, you're gonna show, but you're also gonna show where you deleted the word bulk
Gotcha.
in front of storage.
And does that bring everything over that we needed to bring over from 007?
I believe so.
All right, Bond, you're killed.
So shaken, not stirred.
I like that. That was good.
Well, then if everybody's okay, I'm gonna make a motion because I can vote on this one. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve 24-GP1-040 as presented.
And Hugo, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Oh, one more thing. You're gonna want to italicize in 4004.4.
Italicize this?
The definitions that
Distilled spitzer.
bulk distilled
Bulk distilled.
spirits,
Gotcha.
and also in the, just below that too.
Okay. I'm placing the highlights in here to
Probably
show
wanted to
changes.
also italicize distilled spirits in the bulk distilled spirits definition.
Okay.
You still good with your everything
Motion.
now, Ken? Your motion?
Oh, yes, yeah, the motion's still great.
Okay, and the second still good?
Correct.
Hugo,
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
And that was Ken and Hugo for first and second.
Yes.
Yes.
And that brings us to 9. So on 02, or I guess on our agenda item number 7, 028, I'll consider that one withdrawn as well. Because it's identical as 007.
Yep, that's fine.
Gotcha. All right, this one is a fire tag advisory group proposal done by Ken Brule.
So this one's pretty simple. The 2024 IFC relocated mobile food preparation vehicles from section 319 to section 4106. The existing WAC needs to be repealed, and that section can now be labeled reserved for future amendments. The change proposal to 41.6 just brings an existing amendment from 319, which is adding in or utilize LP gas systems or CNG systems. So this was just relocating a current amendment into the 24 code.
It's pretty
Any questions,
straightforward.
comments for Ken?
And
We
again,
have a
Walker, what was that?
I was just saying it seems pretty straightforward. I'm ready to
Okay.
make a motion if nobody else has any comments. Questions? I will make a motion to advance this to the code council.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Notes, sorry guys. Okay. We're on to number 10, which is a proposal by Patrick Hanks of BIAW. And Patrick, are you online here today?
I am.
Awesome. Would you like to take us through this one?
Yes, let me. Yes, so thank you for the record. My name is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. The purpose of this proposal is, as I was looking through the 2024 model code, I noticed that, this is a case where folks in 1 and 2 family dwellings are sort of given an ability to do something that people in multifamily residential would not be able to do. So I tried thinking of a way that we could make things a little bit more equitable and give folks living in residential buildings under 3 stories in height, kind of thinking of 12 unit, 24 unit, 36 unit walk up type buildings, the ability to participate in, grilling, open flame cooking, typical cultural and cooking norms in a way that folks in 1 and 2 family dwellings would be able to do. Building owners would still be able to, set restrictions for tenants as they wish. And I didn't think there would be any impact to construction or compliance or enforcement costs. Just sort of making a minor change to the focus of the code language there. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Ken.
Okay, so I don't know if you know Patrick or not, but we don't adopt open flame cooking devices in the state. That's section 4104.2. It was 308.1.4 in our current code, and that entire section is not adopted. And there was a filing done just recently to clean that up. So it was filing WSR 24-07-059 that makes sure that we do not adopt 308.1.4 in the 21 code. So they took that section and they brought it into the new 4104.2, and the proposal to move our state amendment over is not to adopt that entire section. So that section just wouldn't apply. It would not, be something that would be enforced.
So you're saying that this statewide amendment wouldn't adopt this part of the model code?
Yes, the state amendment is 308.1.4 isn't adopted, so 4104.2 would say it was not adopted.
That's
If
probably a
makes sense.
confusion on my end when I was trying to go through the significant changes. I didn't always understand what exactly the tag would or would not be proposing. So if this wasn't going to be adopted anyways, great.
But I don't know if we have a coaching proposal or I can't remember. I would have to look. Maybe Dustin knows.
We don't have any more that address this specific section, no.
But in our significant changes in our existing amendment document, didn't we address this? I know that we did.
I'm pretty sure we did. I tried to get everything into my desktop and I didn't pull our existing amendments and significant changes reports over. I can try to pop them open, but it's likely to bog down and not open as conveniently as I would like. Let me attempt that and we'll see where we get. And then I see Troy had his hand up.
I believe that was done in the March meeting, March 15th, March 14th. Where that was stricken or addressed.
Can we just have staff forget to take it out? Inside joke, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very inside joke.
Ray, that was fun coming from you.
Dave, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say something? Or?
No, I was just going to add to it. Basically, it was addressed. I actually testified at the Building Code Council hearing when that original proposal was put together. Unfortunately, I made it into the newspaper as saying that the fire department did not want to be the barbecue police, and that's you can still find it on the internet. It's those things. Once you say something, it never goes away. But that was actually the big argument from the fire service is that we just don't have the ability to enforce all that, and the owners are responsible for it, and that has been what's been going on. So the owner is basically within the rules for those buildings. They can have them or not. It's up to them, but they enforce it.
Were you going to pull that up, Dustin? Or
Yeah, I'm scrolling through it
down?
right now. And Ken, the section in 2021 was 308 dot what if you
308.1.4.
Yep.
So I'm not sure why I don't have a line on here for 308.1.4. I have some other stuff in 308. And I know we talked about it. It's not popping up as conveniently as I'd like at the moment, so but I do recall that this is a section not adopted, and the intent was to maintain that not adoption status in the 2024 code with the location change being the kind of main hurdle there.
Did the tag need to submit a proposal to do that, or is it just an editorial change?
It's an editorial change since the section is moving.
Well, if that's the case, then I think the need for this proposal is not there. So that's good news.
You see, Patrick, you could have just called us. We would have told you.
I'm learning. I'm learning.
So Patrick, I will consider this one withdrawn.
Sure.
All right. All right. Moving to number 11, which is proposal number 80. This one is a fire code tag petition drafted by Hugo Sotelo. And Hugo, are you here online with us still?
Yes.
All right. Would you mind taking us through this one?
Yeah, I know I have a few here. Let me review this a little quickly. Temporary devices. Okay, I think this is just clear up a definition of temporary, and I found another section of the code that defines temporary, and so I wanted to apply that to 4101.1. That's pretty much what I was attempting to do with identifying 100 days, 180 days within a 12-month period on a single premise or premises.
Any comments, questions for Hugo?
We don't have any state amendments now for that section someplace.
This one, 4101.
Well, I don't think there was a 40.
Nope.
Well, because 41 is a new
I know where
chapter.
this
That's what
was before. Yeah.
Yeah, so 41 is a new chapter. So I'm trying to figure out where that, if that got relocated from another section. Which it might not have.
It could be 308 as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so do we have anything in 308? I just want to make sure we don't miss any existing state amendments. Okay, don't. 41.
So just those couple of later sections that are in the WAC, 301.7, or I'm sorry, 308.1.7 and 308.1.9, which don't relate. They're very specific specs.
Looking at the significant changes report, just the comments, we needed to define temporary. And just do we have a proposal needed? So it looks like this proposal accomplishes that kind of note on that report. Ken?
And I could be thoroughly wrong on this, but would this affect at all at construction sites with?
No, it's usually that's, I mean, this is kind of like, where did I get this one? 3103.4. I think it was kind of like where tents were being used temporarily, right? So that's the intent behind that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And there
because
is
they
an
have,
exception that says temporary heating used in the course of construction and demolition shall comply with a different section.
what are you looking at?
Just right above it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right above the 4101, there's that portion.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that then I sorry for not reading that.
No, it's okay. I saw it right after you said it, so it's okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just yeah trying to compare it to the 21. So we put that in. So we do have a state amendment for use period, right? Is that what you're saying, Hugo? In 3103.5 and in the 21 code, we put that in.
Yeah, it's in there. It's defined.
Okay. So we're just trying to be consistent with what we already put in for use period for temporary tents.
Correct. Or
All
for
right.
cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, temporary heating
Yeah.
cooking. Yep.
Yeah, because that's what your number 5 says if I would actually read it. I would figure it out. Okay. So this is just done for consistency.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Then heck, I'll make a motion that we approve the proposal.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not seeing any. We'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not hearing any. Motion passes.
Us to agenda item number 12, proposal number 81. This one is also by Hugo Sotelo on behalf of the fire code tag. So
Yeah,
here we
here's
go.
another one. Was trying to get some consistency with not less than 20 feet for refueling operations. So again, we have tents and 3108.1 or 13.3, and then it's and 41 for mobile cooking.
Does anybody remember off their top of their head new portable generator section?
And that probably shouldn't have been all italicized. I just realized I did all that.
Yeah, I noted that on the last one, Hugo.
Yeah.
When we're done digesting this one, I'll kind of fix it so it's in accordance with how we want it drafted so we can show the change better. And we'll just review it again at the at our final meeting after we wrap up the initial look at all the proposals.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And did you find it's 1204 portable generators and
Thank
24
you.
IFC? Yep.
Okay. So is there a fueling thing in there?
It just says portable generators shall not be refueled while operating. 1204.8.
All right. So
I think
this
we're
would be
good there.
more specific then. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just operating minimum of 5 feet from buildings, openings.
Do we want to call out openings in item 3? We just say from any building, I guess by being 20 feet from the building or structure, you're going to be 20 feet from the openings too. Never mind.
Yeah.
So you taken number 3 and added the word refueling. Does that mean that any other operations? So I'm just trying to figure out the base code says operations shall be conducted in well-ventilated area. Does operations mean I need to keep my generator at least 10 feet away from any building or structure?
No, just the refueling.
Okay. So is there a placement? I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to make sure we're not creating any confusion by if we add, because the subject is refueling of flammable combustible liquid fuel equipment. So I guess it does make sense. I got no other questions, Dan.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve it as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Second?
I'll second.
Without the italicized, obvious.
Yeah. So, okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
So just one question. If this is portable equipment, right? If it is a fixed equipment, we cannot move it 20 feet away. Is this just portable? I'm just following up on Ken's line of questioning.
Well, this is considered temporary heating and cooking operations, so it wouldn't be permanent.
Okay.
Chapter 41.
Okay, good.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any,
Aye.
any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Do you just have to fix a couple italicizes there, Dustin, or?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you see italicized needs to be probably the normal text except for defined terms. Should be pretty quick and easy to do it. And so no need to send it back out for anybody.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to agenda item number 13. It's proposal number 82. And this one is a fire code tag proposal that Hugo has also drafted.
All right, so this one's under 4106.6 regarding solid fuel. The use of solid fuels within mobile food preparation vehicles shall have a listed carbon monoxide detector installed per manufacturer's recommendations. Is what I'm recommending. I realized I didn't put my explanation up top, but I did put it at the bottom. So basically, there's a safety benefit to the owner and operators who conduct fuel fired mobile food cooking to ensure that there's no accumulation of hazardous carbon monoxide caused by solid fuel equipment when stored after the use or during transportation. So like using this solid fuel like wood or coal indoors can affect the indoor quality, and burning these fuels releases smoke, carbon monoxide, and other pollutants that can cause respiratory issues such as asthma and pneumonia. So my goal and intent here was to provide some form of carbon monoxide detection within the mobile food unit when that type of work's being done. And I did do a cost. I mean, there is a cost to this, but I think your local hardware store can provide a carbon monoxide detector really inexpensively. But I did find the most expensive one, and it was $60, but they have a 10-year lifespan, so I think well worth the money. So.
Should the term be carbon monoxide alarm as a standalone local unit? Is that a distinction we should make?
Yeah, probably. That's a good idea.
So what was the language suggestion?
You'd be changing the word detector to alarm.
Well, yeah.
Am I
this-
right that that's a distinction like smoke detector, smoke alarm? Right.
Well, it's a carbon monoxide is a detector and as its alarm, but I guess I thought you were getting at the distinction between like
System
like
connected versus standalone.
yeah, like a standalone. Yeah, exactly. Like a local alarm, I guess, right? Instead of like an expectation to have some fire alarm system. I wouldn't want that. I just want a local alarm and detector. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's an important distinction with smoke. It is the same with carbon monoxide. I'm not so up on that.
So do we want to leave the word alarm in there in place of detector or revert or leave detector?
I'm good with either way. Like,
Anybody more of an authority on this? I just want to make sure we're not implying it's going to be connected to a larger system.
I think carbon monoxide detector is fine.
Okay.
But I think we run into with the smoke detectors and stuff with alarms and stuff like that. That's with a system with alarm system. So we said detector, I think we're going to cover it.
yeah.
Okay. So I made some
But
changes.
that was a good point, though. It's a good point to ask that question.
The only changes I made to this were the formatting of the italicized text and the underline in here. And so the proposal remains unchanged otherwise.
Ken?
Okay, so do we want to italicize the word listed? Because I know that I think it is for the LP gas alarms.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Yep.
Do we have a motion?
Actually, I am looking at chapter 2 definitions. I do think it should be carbon monoxide alarm. So defined term, carbon monoxide alarm is a single or multiple station alarm. Detects carbon monoxide, alerts occupants by an audible signal. Carbon monoxide detector is defined as an integral sensor, detects carbon monoxide gas and transmits an alarm signal to a connected alarm control unit. I do think carbon monoxide alarm would be the appropriate term to use based on the IFC 2 definition.
With those definitions, I concur.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Let me go
Carbon
one step
monoxide
further.
alarm.
Mobile food preparation vehicle, don't we define that too?
I believe so.
Carbon monoxide alarm also should be italic. Yep. Mobile food preparation vehicle. Yes, that whole term's italic.
Not to be picky, is it the definition mobile food preparation vehicle or vehicles?
The definition is plural.
That's my sure.
I think that's all the defined terms.
Oh, well, it's goofy because it goes from 41.0. Actually, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong spot. Nah, never mind.
Okay, do we have a motion for this then?
This is Walker. I'll make a motion to advance this to the code council.
I second.
All right, thank you. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
That is, I think, the last one for Hugo, and maybe a good spot for us to consider a bio break.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
All right. So what, 5 minutes? So back at 3:30.
Sounds good.
All right.
It does when I got a meeting at 4. If that affects quorum, I can push it.
No, we got a good showing here today, so if you have to leave, we'll be okay.
Okay,
Thank you, David.
no problem.
All right, looks like we're getting some folks back. Let me do a quick roll call here and we'll move on down the road.
All right, Dustin,
Uh,
it's time. We're gonna do a
let's
quick roll call.
see. What was that?
Uh-oh.
All right, moving on. Dan Young.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Just doing a roll call. Dan Young,
Yep.
you're here.
Yep.
All right, Jacob Liddycoat.
Here.
Thank you. Ray Shipman.
I am here.
Ken Brulette.
Here.
Thank you. And Hugo Sotelo.
Present.
Thank you. And Ricky Campbell.
Present.
Walker Danucci.
Present.
Dave Cocott.
Present.
Kevin Marr. I think no, not Kevin. It was, are you here, Kevin? I see him online, but I don't hear him. Samir Mokashi.
Present.
Seth Henderson. Seeing him on here, but not hearing him. David Mao.
Present.
Zachary Tuck.
Present.
Lance Dahl.
Here.
And just coming back, Kevin Marr. And Seth Henderson. All right, not hearing from them, but they're still showed online, so we still maintain a quorum here today too.
Okay. What's our next proposal?
Our next proposal is 029, and let me wrap one thing up. You guys still seeing my screen?
Yep.
All right, this is a IFC tag proposal developed by Kevin Marr and Ken Brulette. And not hearing from Kevin. Ken, would you mind running us through this one?
Dang it. I was going to give it to Kevin. So we have an existing state amendment that is shown crossed out for 5306.5 for medical gas systems. And the 24 code has the language below it for medical gas systems and equipment. So the tag had been talking about, do we really need the state amendment? Could we just go with the model code language and eliminate the state amendment? So that's the proposal.
Ready, discussion time. Anybody have questions or comments?
Isn't there something in the UPC on this too that might need to correlate? Trying to think back. I don't have the answer for that, but I thought maybe somebody else would.
That's also what I recall with this too, because it was the plumbing lobbyist had actually removed all reference of NFPA 99 from the fire code, and we fought to get that back several cycles ago. So I know there is something related to that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. I just knew there was something. I just didn't remember what it was.
The 21
is it-
WAC language did have reference to NFPA 99.
Do we know, yeah, I guess my question was, is there a existing amendment in the UPC? Since that's a group 2 code, we haven't begun digesting that one.
I will spin off here real quick and go take a look and pop back on if we want to go to a different proposal or, but I can take a look real quick.
Popping through here myself. Let's see. We have that organized a little bit different for the plumbing code. They have just chapters in the WACs.
I pulled up the entire HTML of the WAC related to plumbing code, and I didn't see any references in the WAC language in all of 51 and 56. Atmos hosting of the Washington State Plumbing Code is easy to search.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the existing WAC language for the plumbing code that impacts on the surface what we're seeing here. Looking at it, looks like chapter 13 covers the medical gas and vacuum systems. And the estate amendments here for the water mains and minimum station outlets / inlets. So I might have to look at model code text to see if there's anything we need to cross-reference here.
I believe they have a certification requirement, but this is not my industry, so I can't direct you guys where to find it.
I seen something in 319, not in the 13, but 319. I'm only working on a single laptop, so I don't have dual screens. So sorry.
And is this in model code language or state amendment?
Oh, shoot, I didn't. I think it is model code language. You're right. Oops.
Let's see here. We've got.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, just looking back on the board advisors documents, this language was amended in 2012. So before that, we didn't even have this. So that's when things changed.
Goes back to 2012, you say? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was certainly the current WAC language is certainly a change to IFC model language 5306.5 because the model language 21 and 24 talks about use of medical gas systems and equipment, and it looks like the WAC language was really careful to avoid requiring the systems be used in accordance with NFPA 99. So maybe that's what the plumbing concern was. I don't have any history on that. I mean,
And that's starting to clear away the fog a little bit. I believe that's more of it is because the challenge that we had was the installation was usually done under the plumbing code, but there was no supervision, there was no verification these systems are maintained properly or not. And the plumbing lobbyists had limited us to not allow any of that. And we were able to get back in to say, well, we can at least now get permits to investigate and verify that these systems are being maintained. We had a structure in Spokane Valley that the tank room had a failure in it at 7 in the morning. Had it been a little bit later, there would have been some injury. The building was basically totaled because of the release of the gas. We had another one in North Spokane do the same thing. So I think that's probably the key thing, was that use was kept out of it, but maintenance and testing had to be still part of the fire code.
So just so everybody understands, in the 24 code, NFPA 99, the reference to it was added in several different places, and that was all done by John Williams. He's on the healthcare committee, but if you guys remember, he's working for what Department of DOH here in Washington State.
last I heard, he's part-time DOH, part-time Facilities Guidelines Institute, FDA.
So that's why in the 24 code, there's more references to NFPA 99 that wasn't there before in the 21 code. So if you
21 IFC did reference 99 as well, but yes, a lot of changes made in 24. I agreed. We've got one instance of the word use in the proposal. I'm certainly good with it, but if we're worried about group 2 plumbing code having concern over that, we could address that, or we move it forward the way it is, and they can air that concern publicly and work through it with council.
I think I'm comfortable moving forward with this one.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move forward with this proposal.
And a second? I got a second from Walker.
Yep.
Discussion? I'm not hearing any. We'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
All righty. Moving on down the line, item number 15, proposal 020. This is a fire code tag proposal drafted by Dave Kokut. And Dave, if you're available to please take us through this one.
I did notice my computer must have put an error on this, that there's basically just one number that's being added to this is 2.1 there. That is the only one that should be listed. The 5 that's underlined at the beginning of that 57 data should not be underlined. And it's just a reference number. They added a 2.1, so we just had to add that to the amendment we have is the WAC itself. Since we have amended the WAC reference in there, we had to add the change language into the amendment.
I'd like to make a motion that we move this forward.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Samir.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor with a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I,
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
And I also have this one as well. This was modification to add in the class 1 as part of this proposal from the tag discussion we had. And the tag, the model code still utilizes the word permitted, and we preferred to have the word approved. So that was the recommendations from the tag for development of this proposal.
I'll make a motion to move this one forward.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
That one that you just showed, Dustin, it showed the class 1 underlined, didn't it? And it shouldn't be. That's model code language under the 5706.5.4.5.
But it's our amendment to it though, so we have to add the class 1 as a our amendment.
But it's in the model code language now. So for the 24. So we're not adding it because it's already there in the 24 code, right? Because I'm looking at the 24 code and it just shows it as a new class 1 was added in the 24 code. We brought it in early for the 21 code, but for the 24 code, it's base code language.
So in the existing WAC here, we have class 1 in there.
I don't think the current WAC does have class 1.
Apologize, my computer keeps bumping out of Zoom. Yeah, we do not have the class 1 in the current amendment, which is the addition.
Okay. So again, so the 24 base code language shows the 1. And
Right.
maybe I'm getting mixed up to what I did in Seattle.
So what we didn't have it in that, and we already had amendment to change the word permitted to approved with our model code language or with our state amendment. So we are already amending this section, so we just have to add in the class 1 designation as well.
Okay, but the word approved and 1 and class 1, that is model code language now for the 24 for this section. So we don't need to make those. We
What
just
you're
need
saying
to.
is we don't necessarily need a state amendment if those changes are there.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to. We only need to work on the number 12.
Number 12 was amendment that we had from the state to our.
Yeah, that's carrying forward the amendment.
Yes,
It
so
already
that
has
is the whole amendment that's also included in there. So
Got it. So, but we don't. Yeah, but that's the whole thing is that we only need to show the amendment to number 12. We don't need to show the other stuff because it's model code language now.
Yeah, I agree with Ken.
or we have to show that whole upper part deleted to it. And
So are we showing the items in number 12 that, no, we're not going to show that the number 12 that gets deleted?
So this, as we have drafted, shows, I guess, here change to whack to add class 1. This right here is a change from the model code in 2021 to what we have in whack. So as far as showing a change in whack, we don't necessarily need to show permitted here or have approved underline. Am I tracking so far?
Yes.
Okay, so if we pull that out, underline that, that's appropriate. And then for item number 12,
No, I don't think we underline the 1 in class 1.
1 comma, yeah.
but so if we're trying to show the change in our whack, we don't have the class 1 liquids in our current whack for this section.
But it's model code language now for the 2020.
Right, so we have to amend our amendment to remove this language from the amendment to go to the model code.
Correct. So if we want to get to model code language in the whack, we have to add class 1. But if we wanted to just remove the amendment, it would be easier, but we have amendments in number 12, correct?
Right.
Okay. So is there
Good
any-
luck explaining that to ICC when they're going to show it as a state amendment then.
Well, so I guess part of this is so that we can draft code language for the whack with the code revisor.
Yeah.
Then as far as changes from the model code, when we give them their document back, this class 1 won't show underlined. It'll be model code in there.
Got it.
At least that is the intent when we get the drafting done. So are there any changes in number 12 for our existing state amendment there?
Looks unchanged to me.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I
you
don't
don't
see any changes
really
there.
need to make any other
I don't
changes.
think so. I think this one will get the job done as we need it as far as showing the change in our whack language.
Okay, but then do you have to go back and underline approved then? If you're underlining 1?
We should.
So it was my understanding, so let's see.
I also believe this isn't consistent what we were doing with other amendments, because we've had this discussion before, if we're gonna start noting all the new changes, even though it's the model code.
So yes, we would need to show the change from permitted to approved in this one.
Right.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess I'm sorry for muddying up the water then.
That's okay,
Just
Ken.
trying to get even, I know.
Keeping us on our toes.
I won't take it personal this time.
You guys realize this is all getting recorded.
Oh, yeah. I want it in posterity.
So since we made changes, do we need another motion?
I would say that the motioners, are you still in support of moving this one forward?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're back to how it was. Yep.
All right. No more discussion on this one? I guess we're ready for the vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes.
All right, we are on to number 22, agenda item number 17. This is a fire code tag proposal drafted by Dave.
Yeah, I'd say with this one that there was a lot of effort on this one trying to get what the tag had put together for the language of this, but I believe I've got all the changes that the tag recommended for the modifications for this section. So we were changing from the types to the tiers, for instance, and some of those other things to be able to get this more in line. So that's basically all I've got at this point, is just trying to modify this to be able to get all of our particular requirements into it that we're already in our amendments.
Are there any questions or comments on this one?
Yeah, Dave, I'm sorry, I do have a question. What happens if we want to go with a more recent NFPA standard that hasn't finished up yet in this? And I'm just looking at NFP 855 and the 25 version that, or I'm sorry, the 26 version that will get adopted. It'll be finishing up in February of 25.
It could make it interesting because that's during the legislative session. Well, it's actually it'll be 26 is when the vote is going to be made on this. It's going to be interesting to see how that would go. We've tried to stay away from just trying to update the standards just to be able to stay consistent with the code, because with the next proposal, we're going to be talking about the references, and that's one of the things that I do want to bring up with the discussion with the tag is that particular one is going to be changed by the changes we're making now. So it's going to go through more changes even potentially before it goes to a final vote with the building code council. So going to have to keep that in mind with some of those.
Okay, thanks.
I know we want to try and keep up with things. I would have liked to just started with the newer code and not having to go back to the 24, but that's just the way things are going. So.
Do we have any more discussion on this, or do we have a motion?
Are we showing the right document?
I believe so, number 22.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done with this one.
No. We're almost to your valet trash one, Ken.
Oh God. Okay. I make a motion that we approve GP-24-GP1-022 as presented.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not seeing any, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Just a question. When Ken proposes changes, he makes a point to say he abstains, but nobody else does.
I'm not voting.
Ah, okay.
And I do it as if it's me doing it versus if I was presenting something as a tag member. If I present something as a tag member, I'll vote.
Okay.
But if it's me as an individual, I'll abstain. So that's probably, one of the other clarifications.
Thanks.
All right, this one is Dave's as well, talking about the changes in our reference standards.
Yes, and what we did is we went through and made sure we got all the proper updated references and things we've had. We've also added in the 85523 was in there, but there's other ones that had some other changes to this. So the one I suggest that tag in the discussion with Dustin on this a little bit is these standards may or may not change from now until we get it to the final code adoption. And typically we've held this particular section out, or we adopt it knowing that we're going to be making some amendments to it in the future, because it's kind of fluid that we could be seeing some revisions to some of these standards for the adoption dates that we have on these. That's typically what we've seen in the past.
We're going through it, Dave. You found NFPA 1333 and 130 were the ones that made sense to move to next edition.
Yes.
So Dave, on this one, if your proposal is to, well, not the proposal, but the tack that they've taken in the past is to hold off on final work on our reference standards until I guess we've gone through all the codes, or until we get ready to file CR 103 on these.
What we run into the past, Dustin, is that there's sometimes in the second group of codes, there's something that comes up with a reference and comes back to referenced ours, and theirs is different than ours. And it doesn't happen very often, but it becomes difficult when we've already approved this one, moved it on, and found out we have to go back and change another number again. And it's just a cautionary approach to this. We could approve this one and make changes later anyways, but just be aware that some of our reference standards in other codes could be changed and maybe in conflict with some of those.
Okay. So there is room to make some changes as part of our CR 103 process. You know, even as we go through group one or group two, sorry, we can entertain some of those, but I guess we would want to just, as a side kind of record keeping, just keep an eye on all the standards that we have changes here too, and just bring them up for discussion prior to final adoption.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So we could move this one forward. And you know, if the appropriate comments come out during our hearings and things, we can make the change after we get our proposal language nailed down in this portion of our rulemaking.
Do we have a motion?
I believe 33 has changed. Actually, it's no longer membrane enclosures. Now spray application using flammable and combustible materials.
Do we need to go ahead and change that language?
I would say yes.
Yes, I'm confirming that on the website, and that is correct. It's got changed.
It should be membrane.
No, it
or
should be
Standard for spray application using flammable or combustible materials.
For flammable or combustible materials.
Using flammable or combustible materials.
And then membrane enclosures just goes away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we'll have to denote that as a strike through.
This was Walker. I'll make a motion to move this one forward as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
All right, that brings us to our last one for the day. Make sure this is saved.
Wow, that was good.
Yeah.
Almost the last one of the day, since we might talk about the other one.
Well, the last one on our agenda, and then we have the other business stuff that we've still got plenty of time for. All right, so Ken, take us away.
All right, so the 2024 Fire Code has a new section 304-1.1 titled Valet Trash. And it says valet trash collection shall be permitted only where approved. The owner and valet trash collection service provider shall comply with the rules and limitations established by the jurisdiction. So there is an Appendix O that's in the 24 code for valet trash and recycling collection in group R2 occupancies. So the problem is in chapter 3, it talks about, hey, HJ, you can permit these things and allow them, but you have to have rules, develop rules. And the easiest thing to do is point to this appendix, which was developed to cover these circumstances. So that's the reason that I'm looking at specifically in Washington State that they adopt Appendix O to be able to give the AHJ some guidance. Now, very recently in the city of Seattle, we do have over 100 of these valet trash and recycling collection systems going on in the city of Seattle. And we did adopt not Appendix O, but we took the language from Appendix O and put it into an administrative rule, which has the same force in the city of Seattle as code. And we just did some minor adjustments to it. But generally the majority of this is all in the city of Seattle's administrative rule to cover valet trash services. So people might not be aware in their jurisdiction if they have this or not, but if they do find it, an AHJ would be like, well, I don't know what the rules are. Well, there'd be an Appendix O that they could now point to and use that for enforcement. So that's the reason it was brought forward. The valet trash people, I contacted them earlier. I had them go to our Fire Code Advisory Board in Seattle, put on a presentation, ask if they if they wanted to attend for this meeting to put on a presentation, and they just said no, they're fine with what was done at the national level with Appendix O. They weren't looking at making any additional proposed changes to it for our state. They were just hoping that we would give it as an option for adoption in the state. So that's it.
And so if a jurisdiction did not want to allow, they'd still have the 304.1.1 language to rely on, that valet trash collection shall be permitted only where approved. So even though it's in the state code, if the city said we don't want that, they'd still have that mechanism.
That is correct.
And just for my information, valet trash is where they put the trash outside the unit. Is that what it is?
So yeah, so generally what happens is these are in, I'm going to just say high-end apartments or condo units that you have a trash receptacle container that you put outside your door in the hallway, and the service comes around and picks it up and disposes of it for you. So you don't have to carry it downstairs and throw it away. Somebody does it for you. And a lot of property management companies have found that that's making it basically their structures and residences more clean because they don't have an issue with you know, stuff stacked up all over the place.
Dave?
So I understand what you're trying to do, Ken, but we don't adopt appendices because that takes away some of the local authority for how they want to handle these. That gives them that they have to follow this. So I don't necessarily think this is the right thing because the appendix is already there. If the local jurisdiction wants to adopt it, they can adopt it locally without any problem. I don't necessarily see the need for the proposal.
If you wanted to reference it, you could put in the main language that when adopted, when Appendix O is adopted, it will follow that requirement rather than adding the appendix.
That is an option, yes.
I
Is
don't have too big of a fight in this. It would just be nice if if we had some form of consistency. So the people understand that the rules are uniformed, and you're right, an individual jurisdiction could adopt it separately. And
I think most likely they would just adopt the appendix. And I know that's been an interesting situation is that each of the jurisdictions has their own little tricks to it, and I'll even say that East and West are different, and so by having a standard that they can take the appendix and modify it as they see fit if they adopt that. And if we adopt just the appendix as the code, now they're going to have to go through a code change to be able to make some changes to it. So we don't adopt other appendices. They're there for guidance documents. It just doesn't seem like that's something we want to be able to adopt this. We just, I think, coming out a pointer in the code basically saying where you'd have this is available for you to adopt to provide standard.
So when you say that we normally don't adopt appendices, doesn't the residential code have appendices that are adopted in the state or not?
There are a couple.
We do have a couple in there.
Yeah, but they're not. But the other code's pretty limited. We really try to stay away from that. But yeah, I'm just saying that's what we've done in the past, and I think that it's fine leaving it that way to me, in my mind. But I don't get to vote. And I also have to apologize, Dan. I have to head out in a couple minutes, so I won't be able to be here for any more discussion. But I appreciate participating today.
So you drop a bomb and then just leave. Is that what I heard?
That's what the people who don't get to vote get to do. Now, if I had a vote, I probably would have stayed.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dave.
I have a conflict, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
So how passionate are you, Ken, about it?
Well, I'm only passionate because I don't want inconsistencies with the largest jurisdiction in the state. Because if we've adopted these rules right now, so in the city of Seattle, we have an administrative rule that would cover this. No, it hasn't been published yet because it was just done. And then there's these, other jurisdictions start seeing this and they're going to be like, I don't have any rules or regulations. They could at least point towards the Appendix O that's already been adopted at the state level as guidance for them. And then the people that actually provide the service are already familiar with all of this. I understand Dave's point that a local would still have to make any adjustments to it if they wanted to. But I'm just trying to, the problem is exactly what happened is there was a section in chapter 3 that said, hey, you can approve these And if you do, you have to have rules. There are no rules. And they tried to put this into the body of the code. And at the national level, they just said, no, it's just too much. Let's keep it as a appendix right now and let it ride a cycle through. So I thought that would be the smart thing for our state is to, because it's not going away. It's a service. It's there now. And I just don't know if any other jurisdictions besides Seattle is having to deal with it, or if they even know about it. So it might not, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that it might not affect other jurisdictions other than Seattle right now, but
I would think other larger cities are going to start to see it probably sooner. But it sounds like, you know, there's this option, or we could go to, you know, section 304.1.1 and add a pointer there that, you know, rules and limitations established by the jurisdiction, comma, which may include Appendix O. Or something like that.
Essentially, you're drawing attention to Appendix O, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Hugo?
Yeah, I also think that we should not consider adopting this. And the reason being is I don't want to be in the middle of an established property manager rules or regulations between their tenants, and it may be more strict than this. And I wouldn't want tenants to be relying on this saying, oh, no, I could do this based off this adopted code. So I just like, you know, barbecue grills out in patios and stuff like that. I just don't want to meddle in, you know, property management rules and regulations.
I guess my only argument to that is if you have somebody doing this in one of your R2 occupancies now, would you allow it or not? And if you didn't allow it, what would be the justification for it?
That didn't allow it would be the combustibles in a rated corridor, right?
Yeah, but that's been a discussion that at the national level that it doesn't apply. Those sections don't apply. They've been applied inappropriately by fire code officials. It's because it talks about the required egress width. So as long as the required egress width is clear, then it's okay to have the combustible stored outside that required egress width in the hallways or corridors. There are exceptions for other areas, of course, when they talk about elevator lobbies and stuff, but that's always been because that's what I used when we first fought against this in Seattle. We used no combustible storage in the hallways. And what the companies do is they make sure that they only find customers that they have the egress width. So it's way beyond the minimum, let's say 44 inches. They have a minimum requirement in their heads already that they won't even start up a business until they have enough width to include the width of the cans plus the minimum egress width there. And you have to also look at it just kind of a different perspective is how do you regulate right now all these apartment buildings that get deliveries that are done to their doors and the packages sit out in the hallways of all there? That's combustible materials just sitting there. And there's nothing that I don't know if anybody's going around now and telling them that that's not allowed. So I don't know. I'm pretty much said all that I can, and I'll just let the tag do what they want. And if it dies, it dies.
Do we have a motion? One way or the other?
I think we have to deny it based on what we talked. right? Ken?
Well, that's up to the tag if they want to
Yeah.
make it. Yeah, it's fine. So it's whatever the tag decides. I'll be abstaining. So
Do
So
we see
just an
value in
informal,
putting a
let's have an informal discussion. Is there support to do this based on the discussion we've had? Anybody wants to move this forward? All right, then I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
as Walker, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
With one abstention. Ken.
What was that?
I was stating my vote.
Oh, so Kevin? Yep.
I think Kevin opposed.
No, I'm not voting.
Okay. So 2 abstentions, Ken and Kevin.
Okay.
All right, so with that one completes our agenda and brings us to other business. And in our topics not on the agenda discussion, we were talking about NICET versus NAFED certification in section 904 of the fire code. And so, Ken, I don't have that proposal that you had up on screen earlier. Would you mind sharing that? I'll stop my share.
okay. So again, this is for the 2021 Washington State Fire Code to change this section, adding the S to make it exceptions, creating a number 1, creating a number 2.
And we're
Hey,
not
Ken, I
seeing
don't think
your,
your,
we don't see it
your
yet.
forms up. We can see your desktop, it looks like.
All right.
it's a
Let's get the
very
right.
clean desktop.
Probably a
Don't look at
second
mine.
desktop.
Let's get the right screen. Screen 3.
Got 3 desktops.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. So again, adding the S for exceptions, adding the number 1 and number 2. Yeah, there should be a period after it. And then number 2, adding in the current language that was proposed to State Building Code Council back in, was it May or June? And then, but we would add in and manufacturer certification. So it would include that language there, which doesn't need to be highlighted. It just
Make a colon after exceptions as well.
got it. So I'll just, does it need to be red? That's just showing that that was.
And is this proposal going to be the language for both a potential emergency rule and the permanent rulemaking?
For 904.1.1, yeah, it would, yes, it would definitely be one for the emergency rule.
Okay.
So emergency rule for 2021 and then regular fire code for 2024, Ken?
No, we're talking regular rulemaking for the 2021 to just carry this out through the life of that code in Washington.
Okay.
And then this might, so we had the proposal for this section for the 2024 code. is this different than what we approved there? I'd have to go back and
Well,
check.
you mean, are you talking about what was approved as the emergency amendment? I mean, this
No.
was the language that's in the 21 code.
Yes, so Jamie also submitted a proposal for changes in the 2024 code.
Yes, so this is, let me bring it over there.
And I also propose changes to this too. But
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me get rid of.
In fact, for the
So-
2021 fire code, Ricky's proposal was passed. My proposal, nobody voted on it.
Yeah, so
We
But what-
tabled it, right?
It was just moved to come before the State Building Code Council.
Okay.
Mine
That's
was,
correct,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
That's correct, sir.
So this was the proposal that he had before.
Yeah.
So we're just adding in. So what's the proper thing that needs to happen?
I just want to make sure that we're catching all the loose ends here. So the 2024 proposal, that when we make a motion, we're making a motion on this language for both emergency rule and for normal rulemaking. And then we'll take that to the committee this month or next month, I should say, and then to the council at the November 15th council meeting. And then at that council meeting, the anticipation is that the council will listen to this group and direct staff to file CR 103E for emergency rulemaking, and then to also file CR 102 with the proposed language for the 2021 code. And then when we get to the group 1 codes, the 2024 proposal will be just snowballed into that group.
Do you need the modified language in this proposal and resubmitted? Do you need that language?
So let me open up the proposals. All right. Okay, this was Jamie. Okay, so yes, on this one, Jamie, yours here, we referred it back out to you for additional modifications. And since it wasn't necessarily on this agenda, but we're kind of covering it today, we would look for these modifications to be brought back in that proposal. And then at our next week's meeting, we can move this proposal forward for the 2024, but we can still make the motions for the 2021 process for emergency and normal rulemaking today.
We're going to make 2021 rulemaking today, and then
Yes.
I will resubmit this with the new language for 2024 for next week.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can certainly do that part, do my part for that. I guess I'll just wait to see what steps we take next.
Gotcha.
So what I'm showing is that his proposal, the effective date is going to stay the same because that's how it is right now. And then all of the underlined, which you would have to change this.
Yeah, my change needs to remove that second or change the language on that second exception, right? Actually, it's there now. So.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to make it so maybe I can email it to you so then you can just.
I appreciate that.
Oops. Come on. So added the S. Don't know if this is going to mess it up. Did not. So does he need to make any other changes to this document, Dustin, or besides how we just showed it to match what we just discussed?
If the modifications like we've seen here, are what we are showing here on the screen for our 2021 stuff, then no, we
this-
don't need to modify this one any further, I don't believe.
Okay. So again, this is
So you
just
can accept the 2021 as is shown, and then I'll resubmit the 2024.
Yes.
Hey, Ken, when you finish that, can you send me that copy so that we're on the same page?
yeah. Oops. So is there anything else you need from the tag then?
Just a motion to move all this stuff in, so not on the 2024 proposal, but on this one, if I'm gonna suggest a crafted motion, that we make a motion to take the proposal that you have drafted on screen for the 2021 code to the committee for both normal rulemaking and emergency rulemaking to make it all flow, and then from the committee to the council in November.
So moved.
That was easy.
Seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We've had a lot of discussion. Is there any more discussion? Okay, we're gonna.
Ken, if you could include me in a transmission of this draft, that would be awesome too.
Got it.
I'd like to thank the committee for guidance, if I'm honest. I always have known what I've needed or wanted for my industry here, but getting it and going through the procedure has been eye-opening, and I appreciate the guidance from Ken and from Dustin and from Ricky to get here.
And who was our seconder on this motion?
I was Samir.
Thank you, Samir.
All right, we're go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
All righty. Is there any other business? I don't think we have talked about anything else.
I think it was 24 GP1119, the revision that was talked about in the last meeting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, were
Oh,
we
yeah.
supposed to bring it up during this one?
We could, so I haven't had a chance to post that for everybody, but I can pop that open here, I do believe.
So basically it was sent back to me for me to correct the citation of the reference standard, which was the main issue that was talked about.
Okay. So.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
All right, so this one, Karsten, we can take action on this one here as part of other business. And just so everybody knows, this will come back to the tag in one final meeting so that we have some chance for public to digest whatever's in this one and any changes that may be made here today as well.
Alrighty.
So Karsten, you want to lead us through what you modified on this one?
So basically, as you remember during the last meeting, the main thing that was talked about was like adding the proper citation for the reference standard. And so I took care of that, both for the IBC and the IFC. The two codes list the reference standards in different ways, so I made sure to do it correctly for each one. Your screen share isn't working yet.
Oh, that's my apologies. Okay, there we go. We should be seeing what you have drafted in here.
Yep, it's up there.
So yeah, does this look good? Does it sufficiently describe how it would be added to the table for the IBC?
I believe so. I mean, I would, I guess, ask some of the folks who may have had some issue with this proposal at the last time it was heard, to have some input as well. So I guess currently we're looking at changes made in, I guess, so this one up here for both codes in section 1013.6.1.1, you're proposing a new section with this numbering here?
Yes, that's correct. A new subsection. It was previously 113.7 in my initial proposal, but they changed it to this as part of some feedback that was discussed during the.
So I'm just making this a little more clear for what we're gonna have in the code there. Okay, so there's that section, 1013.6.1.1, which is a new section, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Also, you may want to add another period right after the title ended.
Gotcha. And so this one, we need to modify the table to include this stuff here.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's for the building code.
So we have some time. I'd like to get a version of the table and drop these in there before we bring that to IBC. And
All right,
then
go.
as far as what we have going on here, it's a reference standard. So this one's just another list in the reference standards. Do we have any other ISO standards listed in there?
In the fire code, yes. Not as a whack amendment, but
So we have an existing
code.
ISO, but this is going to be an amendment that we're creating for that chapter 80 then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, all of the reference standards that are amended are in like one amendment whack section, so this could
Yes.
be appended on.
Okay, so this adds another ISO reference document. So I'm looking here at the model code. We have ISO 8115-86, and this will just be a new line underneath there. I think that is.
Or wouldn't it be before there if we're doing it, if it's done based on the
You're
number?
correct. You're correct. It would be numbering would put it before that other standard. I think that this one works. I think as far as just drafting what we have going on here, that adding this before the other ISO standard works, and then if I can get a table to bring to the building code group, this I think it'll make it a little more easy for them to digest what you're adding to the table if we go ahead and put it in there for them.
Alrighty, good. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So here today with this group, we're looking at this section and this section added in as a reference standard. And then I'll work with Karsten to clean up this section here so that it's presentable to the building code tag. So is there any comments or questions from the group to Karsten?
Yeah, I'm sorry, there's still the words in addition to or in lieu of. I'm still trying to figure out if that's the best code language.
Gotcha.
Because like, is it because the code doesn't use the word lieu a lot, and so like,
I don't think it uses lieu at all, does it?
yeah, so perhaps lieu should be changed to place, because like, is that what the code prefers to use?
I would say maybe if we just said.
Are you trying to say in combination or alone?
Yes, basically in addition to or instead of.
Maybe like in addition to the requirements in 1013.6.1.
Say in addition to or instead of 10.6.
In addition to the requirements of section 1013.6.1, exit signs may include the pictogram for emergency exit in accordance with ISO 7010.
Well, yeah. It would have also allowed in addition to or in place of is what the original proposal wanted to do.
The proposed change is, I think I heard it.
So shouldn't this also say like in addition to or instead of? So yeah, that has the same meaning as the original, but just is a little clearer wording.
Yeah, I'm just trying to search stuff in the fire code that since in lieu is not in there, and just trying to come up with a better code language.
Does instead sound like a good enough synonym for in lieu of?
So if we say it in place of this, it can be used. Why do you have to say in addition to?
Because like some building owners might want to have both the pictogram and the word exit, and so this is making clear that that's also allowed if a building owner wants that.
Can you say in addition to or together with?
So like change like in addition to together with or instead of, or is
So instead of saying in addition to or together with.
No, in addition to also means and this code change is meant to allow it to be used either by itself or in addition to, and so we were just trying to find the best like code language to do that.
Okay.
How about we try to incorporate the 1013.6.1, but maybe exit signs may include either the pictogram or the text exit. I don't know. I had it in my brain and then it escaped as I tried to say it.
Yeah. Writing code can sometimes be really
So you're
hard.
saying it can be used and or, right? You're saying and or combination.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
So Dustin, what you said, instead of just say and or.
Where should I place that one, Samir?
The
So I
the
think
requirements of section 13.1 may include exit signs and or pictogram.
Yeah, and or is something that's code language that we used in the past.
I don't know. Pick that in. So
You'll take that out, yeah,
We're talking about the requirements
of section, yeah.
of section 1013.6.1.
May be satisfied by exit signs and or pictograms.
I don't know if satisfied is.
Yeah,
the
I don't
word.
know if we want to use satisfied.
That's nowhere else.
Met.
And it should be.
Deemed
It
to
should
have
be
met.
shall. It
Shall
should be a
be,
shall.
yeah.
It should be a shall.
Shall be an exit sign and or pictogram.
So, you may want to make sure there's a slash between the words and or.
Plural, I guess. Exit signs and or
Yeah, that's it.
pictograms.
Because yeah, we have the word and in front of it, so we should say that. Replace the S with.
Oh, I see. And exit sign and or the
Yeah.
pictogram. Just take the S off signs.
I still feel like there's a word missing in between by and exit, by and.
Shall
So
be
the-
satisfied.
Or addressed.
I think Ken didn't want the word satisfied, so maybe shall
you
be
could-
met by.
Shall be met, yeah. Deemed to meet.
What if
Yeah,
we just
shall
take
be-
out by and says shall be an exit sign and or a pictogram?
Yeah, we're kind of muddying things up here because the title of the section is Internationally Standardized Pictogram.
What if it was exit signs and or a pictogram shall be deemed to meet the requirements of section 1013.6.1, and I guess a pictogram in accordance with ISO 7010 meets the requirements of section 1013.6.1.
So yeah, basically take the first few words and put them on the end, is what you're saying?
Kinda, I'm experimenting here too.
What are we saying? It should be exit sign and or pictogram for an emergency exit in accordance with ISO 7010. Shall be acceptable to address the requirements of section 1013.6.1, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So just trying to catch this one. Walker, do you mind repeating that one?
Do we want it plural? Or do we want it singular? We could say an exit sign and or
It should probably be
pictogram.
singular. This is referencing each particular instance of it. So
Okay. An exit sign and or pictogram. Yep. In accordance with ISO 7010, shall be an acceptable means of addressing the requirements. Yep. Make it singular, an exit sign. And or, I don't think we need a, I think just an exit sign and or pictogram. Yeah.
So there's another factor to all this, and it's by the means of illumination, because the way it's either illuminated by external source or internal source, it references exit signs, not pictograms. So that's another factor.
Yeah, the illumination requirement is meant to be the same regardless. So,
But the code sections reference exit signs. There's no mention of pictograms.
because an exit sign that features the word exit and or the pictogram. Is that what?
No, I'm talking about other parts of this code. When there's other requirements for exit signs, specifically for internally or external illumination. So just want to know if this is the intent. We're not going to have the same expectations for these pictograms to
No,
have.
the expectation will still apply. There's still meant to be a type of exit sign. So an exit sign so perhaps it should say an exit sign that features the word exit and or the pictogram for an emergency.
I think the bigger picture I'm getting at is there's no illumination requirements for pictograms with this as it stands.
So we could fix that pretty quickly by saying an exit sign that features the word exit and or the pictogram.
Could be.
Illumination is referenced in the code, and it's specific to exit signs. So you would have to go back through this whole section, either add an addition.
I think you're typing incorrectly, and
I think the pictograms need to meet the requirements set forth in section
10.13.6.2.
Yes, that's what I intended all along.
Well, it should be 10.13. It's kind of an umbrella.
You want to just call all, okay.
Yeah, if you do use it, you still have to meet all the other requirements.
Yes, that's the intent.
So Hugo, what you're thinking, and I agree with, is that we need to be adding the word pictogram throughout 10.13.6. So wherever it says exit sign,
Right.
it says and pictogram.
Yeah, or update this language to where it says the requirements of section 10.13.6.1. That really should be 10.13.
10.13.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about like 10.13.6.2 and 3, which specify like illumination, stuff like that.
Yeah, but you're still being held to the requirements under 10.13, regardless.
Yes, exactly. There's
if you want
still intending
pictograms or
to
not.
comply with those.
That would be the easiest option. Then we can hold the requirements for illumination and other requirements.
So the entire section 10.13 needs to be rewritten to include it, and that would be the proposal to come back.
Well, if this sentence that he just added seems to address that.
No, I think what you're saying is right, I think. So this amendment is not to change section 10.13.6.1.1. Amendment is to section 10.13, where it says exit signs. We are adding pictorial, right, Hugo?
Well, you're adding a different means of a graphic, right? But
Yeah.
Regardless of the graphic, whatever you choose, you still need to comply with illumination requirements.
Exactly.
But in doing so, illumination requirements only refers to exit signs, not pictograms.
Well, the thing is, if the pictogram is just meant to be like the graphic of it, and it still is a type of exit sign.
But a pictogram is not defined as an exit sign in definitions.
So does this body think that calling pictograms out here as just a caveat that they need to comply with all exit sign provisions of 10.13, which it would include the illumination and where required and all the other portions of 10.13? Or does this group feel that a better tack for the intent of this proposal would be to maybe rename section 10.13 to exit signs and exit pictograms, and modify where it includes exit signs to just add exit signs and pictograms readily, like for example 10.13.1.
I think it'd be easier just to add, to comply with 10.13 in that added amendment, that section there.
instead of coming back through and adding pictograms.
Yeah, because
yeah, exactly.
you're gonna confuse, and I think it's just cleaner to do it that way anyways.
So, but there is 13.1, 13.2, so there's lots of things that get added in. So it actually, go back to the language of the base code, Justin.
Well, anything that falls under 1013, so that's all you have
Yeah,
to
but there is nothing under 1013. The first is 1013.1.
Well, everything under 1013 means
Hang on, Karsten. We understand what you're saying, but let me talk out a little bit. So 1013.1 is where required, right? And then you go down to external and internal, and Karsten wants internal and external signs to have that sign. So it almost feels like it should go all the way down to 1013.7 that says where exit signs are permitted, pictorial graphic signs per the standard.
Well,
would be
that's
permitted
actually a
as
bit of
well.
an interesting situation here. So the internally illuminated ones have to comply with a UL 924, and that already does allow the pictogram as an option. So
But
this
not in
change is
our
meant-
code, right? Not in our code.
No, it specifically says that UL has to be complied with, and that does allow that.
Right, but if you go up and require exit sign, it says the text, right? Doesn't say pictograph.
No,
Graphics.
that's under the
But
subsection
9.
for externally illuminated ones. And so this change is meant to add a new subsection to this.
I
Yes,
think
1013.5 relies on UL 924. 1013.6 has this separate graphics section.
I
Go
think
ahead, Hugo.
a cleaner version of this is under graphics. May use pictograms as under under the requirements of 1013, or follow the requirements of 1013, something to that nature. It's like it's in addition to, but you still have to follow the requirements of 1013.
Yes, that was my intent.
You're not replacing, it's an additional option, but if you do, you still have to meet the requirements of 1013.
Yes, see, that's specifically stipulated right there.
Hugo, do you want to help write this with Karsten so we don't keep sending them back and forth?
Yeah, I think it's just some wordsmithing and making it flow right. We don't need to rewrite this whole section to accommodate pictograms. I think it's just an option, an alternative option, and I see the intent, and it's a good idea. And so
Okay. So how about after this verb, I got a minute left here. I will send this back out as drafted on screen right now to Hugo and Karsten for a little bit more work. Karsten, I'd like to get with you to talk about the table for the IBC as part of that. And then let's try to get this ready to bring back at next Tuesday's meeting. And hopefully we can get something out by Friday so that we can post it.
Alrighty, so Dustin, will you email both me and Hugo?
Yes.
and then I'll respond with my contact info.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
All right. I think that wraps up other business for us for today.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. A lot of
on
work
time.
today.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Take
And
care.
we'll see you all next week.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Have a good week, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.